was weird because at first it just kind of came out of me, you know? It was actually one of the first songs I wrote for the album. I was really just like feeling that anger. The timeliness of it is really palpable and it's very special. And a lot of people have been like, wow, like how did you know women were gonna need this song so much right now? And I'm kind of like, if you think this is our first time we've needed to be angry, then you haven't been paying attention. You know, it's just unfortunate it got worse when I put out the song. I think, you know, obviously growing up in like Newark and New Jersey, there's kind of like this catcalling culture that is like really prevalent. As I've gotten older and as I've gotten more successful, and you know, in ways I've become more privileged, I've become more protected, but it doesn't really matter who I am or what I've achieved. One of the things that I'll never escape is the catcalling. I remember being 13 years old, walking home from school in a uniform, being 20 years old, well, being 18 years old and working in like a pizza place, being 24 years old, sitting on a red carpet, watching AOC, watching Hillary Clinton on stage doing debates, and either like hearing or reading men be like, ugh, come on, why don't you smile? You're so pretty, what a waste of a face, you're so frigid. Gosh, she's such a, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. And if you don't smile, then they're likely to say, oh, that girl is such a nightmare. That woman is such a nightmare. And for a long time, I beat myself up about it. I would be like, oh, I don't want anybody to think I'm mean. I don't want anyone to think I'm rude. And I had this like sense of respect for people who probably didn't deserve it. And there eventually came a time where I was like, you know, smiling to someone who was saying something like objectifying or disrespectful to me, all for the sake of not wanting to make a scene or like make a big deal out of it. And one day I was just like, you know what? No, not anymore. I'm gonna be a nightmare. And if that's a problem, I'm sorry. I don't owe you any kind of complacency or joy or convenience. There's absolutely nothing that says I need to smile to make your day better, because you're not making mine. And that's kind of what it was. So I was in the studio with Benny Blanco working on the third album, and we'd kind of been like really inspired with like 90s rock, like early 2000s kind of stuff. Like I'd been listening to a lot of like Blondie, a lot of Tattoo, a lot of Gwen Stefani, and just like thinking about that like energy, and thinking about how I hadn't really had a song on the radio yet where I was yelling. And during my live show, I'm yelling a lot. My fans really know me for that. Like, a lot of people who hear my stuff on the radio probably think of me as a more like sensitive, emotional, you know, kind of girl. But if you listen to my albums, they're like just jam-packed full of these like angry FU songs. So sometimes people come to the concert because they hear me on the radio and they show up and they, you know, they want to hear Closer or like Now or Never or Bad at Love, and then I come out in a ski mask and fishnets like jumping into the crowd, and they're like, wow, this is not what I was expecting. So we were in the studio kind of riffing on how do I make a song that is melodic and catchy that everyone's gonna like relate to, but also has that grit and that anger and that passion that I see in my fans in the crowd every night. And I had already been thinking about the kind of like the catcalling concept, and the two things just felt, it was like an immediate like light bulb. I think I wrote both those verses in probably like 2 minutes. Yeah, like I literally sat down on my phone and was just like, from I've tasted blood and it is sweet down to I'm tired and angry, but somebody should be. It was just so on my heart that I kind of just like spit the whole thing out. And then we like riffed on the chorus for a while. And I was just like, what is gonna make people from the first listen just hear that, "I!" And like when we hit that note, I was like, oh, this is great, it's amazing. I knew it was ready when I played it for some of my female friends, and they were like, you know, this hits so close to home for me. And I played it for some of my male friends, and they're like, this makes me want to break stuff. I was like, good, that means it's done. It was kind of serendipitous. I had an intro on the song that felt kind of empty for me. I felt like there was still more to say. And obviously the song was called Nightmare, and we had been riffing on this like sweet dreams, like good night, wake up kind of thing. And I had exactly, I think, 4 bars in the beginning of the song that I wanted to fill. And I didn't know what to put there because I already said so much in the song. It's just a lot to unpack there. And I remembered this prayer I used to say before bed when I was a kid that was supposed to make me not have nightmares. And I say in the bridge, I say, save me your prayers. So I've got save me your prayers, nightmare, 4 bars of empty space, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know what I'm gonna put there. It was kind of hard to explain. I think it's a Catholic prayer. Benny's Jewish, and he was like, I've literally never heard this before, and I was like, just promise me like a lot of people know this thing, and it's gonna go over really well. And he and I were kind of riffing back and forth for a while too, and he was sharing some stuff like from his religion and like his culture that he kind of grew up with that was really similar, and that kind of made me really want to put it in, because I was like, everyone has that memory from when they were a kid of like whatever they would say to their God, you know, about wanting to have a sweet dream. And I think that kind of made it a little dark, and it made the reality like a little sharper. I think that there was like a lot of things that like felt really cohesive to me at the time, and so it made sense to kind of riff off of them one by one. Obviously, like touching on all these subjects is difficult to begin with, let alone doing so in a way that's like rhymey and like easy to listen to, I guess, in a weird way. I think there's a couple parts, like obviously men catcalling women leads to like a whole other perspective, which is the exploitation of women's bodies, which leads to a whole other perspective, which is female insecurity as a result of that exploitation. So this thing was kind of just like on a journey of its own, and I was just kind of like writing. There's one part in particular where I say, I've pinched my skin in between my two fingers and wished I could cut some parts off with some scissors. And at first I was kind of nervous to put that part in, because it's obviously it's a little graphic, but I knew I had to keep it in. When every woman that I played the song for went, I have literally had that exact same thought. I've literally wished I could cut parts of me off in moments where I didn't like how I looked. It's like, obviously it's a commentary on plastic surgery, but also just like that kind of, that body dysmorphia, that feeling of, you know, hating parts of yourself so much you would cause yourself pain to remove them in such like a heinous, gruesome way. And then a lot of men who heard that part were like, is that real? Like, do you really feel that way? And I was like, yeah, a lot of us do. And that's when I knew it was like important to keep that kind of thing in. The second verse was like, I've been polite, but won't be caught dead letting a man tell me what I should do with my bed. That part was a really important lyric for me to put in. I've been openly bisexual for the entirety of my career, and I've been really open about my struggles with reproductive health. And more often than not, I find in my personal case, a lot of people having like opinions on, you know, my sexuality or like, you know, my experiences with reproductive health. And then it's obviously amplified to a bigger level when we look at everything that's been going on politically, you know, as far as like the regulation of people's access to reproductive health care. I think that lyric, I didn't realize what that lyric was gonna mean at first, but the sentiment was already there. So obviously it grew into something even bigger, just the idea of like, it's nobody's choice but my own what I do with my body, with my bed. My bed serving as like the metaphor for myself in my private life, you know? Those are some of my favorite lyrics in particular.